at this point, we're ready to start filling in the layout links. So let's take a look at what that means. So these links, home, help, sign in, and these guys on the bottom. And this isn't formally a layout link, but we also want to figure out what to do with this link. You can see right now they don't do anything. If you click on it, you get this pound sign in the URL, but it doesn't actually go to the page. And that's because we stubbed them all out. And that's great when doing the basic design for the layout, but of course we do want these to be real links. And moreover, in several cases, in the case of the About page and the Contact page, we already have pages for those. So let's figure out how to link those in. Now, we could do this by hand. One way to do this would be to go to, in this case, the header. Actually, let's go to the footer. We could put in something like /pages/about at this point. You can see this will actually work. I need to reload it. But there are two reasons why we'd prefer not to do it this way. One reason is that it would actually be nicer to have this be /about rather than /pages/about, although that doesn't matter a whole lot. But the second reason is that the Rails way to do links is to use what are called named routes. And so instead of some sort of specific hard-coded URL, we're going to make this an about path. You can also do about URL. There's only a tiny difference between the two. One of them always works in tests, and the other usually works in tests, and this is the one that always works. So I've standardized on using the path convention. So about_path conceptually is the path to the About page. And what's nice about this is that in addition to being transparently understandable to someone reading it, it's also really flexible, because if we decide to change the URL from /pages/about to /about, then we can handle that at a different layer. We don't have to edit our template. We can do that in the place where this will be defined, which it turns out will be the routes file. And that also means that if we link to the About page in multiple places, that it will automatically get updated. We can take a look at what happens here. Right, so this will break because there is no such path. The goal of this section now is to define some of these named routes for our static pages. And this section we are going to develop using test-driven development. And this is a nice opportunity to introduce the idea of integration testing. Let me briefly describe what that means. Let's go back to the stubbed out version. So one of the problems that we need to solve here when we're thinking about the routes for the different links is that not all of the routes will necessarily correspond to pages within a single controller. So something like the About page and the Contact page are in the Pages controller. But this sign-up page, we'll learn, will actually live in the Users controller. So in order to test routes, it's nice to have a testing setup that will let us hit pages on multiple controllers. Now, there are several ways to test routes, and this is just one of the possibilities. But integration testing is such a great thing to learn about in general that this is a nice opportunity. So let's take a look at that. Let's make an integration test called layout links. The way we do that is with Rails generate integration test, an underscore, and then layout underscore links. And you can see that it created a file called spec requests layout link spec. This used to be integration, but now it's requests in RSpec2. I'm not sure why, but that's the way it is. And notice that it automatically appended the underscore spec to the file. This is following the usual convention for RSpec specs, or RSpec tests, or whatever you want to call them. All right, so let's take a look at spec requests layout link spec. In fact, let's close down some of these guys. So this is our template. It's just a basic test, but it doesn't really do anything. In fact, we want to get rid of what's in here. Let's take a look. Let's get rid of this describe block. All right, so let's take a look at our other spec that we've got. We've got this pages controller spec. We're going to be using essentially the same syntax that we have here. Inside of the layout link spec, we're just going to have different examples for each of the possibilities. So let me just show you one of them. In TextMate, you can do it tab. It should, let's say, it should have a. So where do we want these different links to be? Let's think about it. We want this home page to live at /. That's what we want our root URL to be. Right now, / is this. And that's no good. We want that to be the home page. And then let's design it so that /about and /contact go to those pages, and /help goes to help. We don't actually have a help page, so this will be a test for the help page as well, implicitly. And we'll probably add a test to the page controller spec too. So it should have a home page at /. Now remember that the way you issue a GET request to a particular action is GET and then the name of the action. In an integration test, you just put the actual path to the page. So in this case, we can just do GET /. And then we want to say that the response should have selector. And let's just use the title as the way of indicating which page it is. So this is title, and the content will be home. Now I'm mixing single quoted strings and double quoted strings here for reasons that are obscure to me, and that's just, I don't know, sometimes I use single, sometimes I use double. So let's take a look at one of the just a second example, and then we'll run these tests. Let's do the contact page. Have a contact at /contact. Get /contact, and then response.should have selector. That's contact. Oops, I'm sorry, this is title. Oops, and I screwed this up, didn't I? This is content. This is content. And the content should be contact. So you notice I'm saving these, but Autotest, which is still running on my system, isn't actually doing anything. So let's fix that. So if you can see, if I run this, the last oh wow, there we go. So the layout links is complaining. Now I should mention that there's some configuration you have to do to get Autotest to run the integration tests. And that's in the Ruby on Rails tutorial book, so you can check that out. That configuration is sort of highly specific to your particular system. So you can see that this is good, though. We've got some failing specs here. Let's take a look at it again. So there are two examples that have failed, and that's pretty much what we expected. And in this case, you can see it says not found, which also isn't surprising because there just isn't anything at /contact. All right, let's add the other integration tests. We also have an about page. Have an about page at /about. And I'm going to get /about. Response should have selector. I'm just hitting escape a lot here. If you're wondering how I'm doing this. And we want one more. We want have a help page at. So this is testing the routes, because what this means is when you say get /help, if there isn't something at /help, it's not going to work. It's not just testing for the existence of the page. And I don't want to run this one yet. Let's do this. In fact, I'm just going to comment out all these guys just for a second. I just realized I do want to add a help page. So let's comment this out and get back to where, yeah, it complains at that, doesn't it? Okay, so here's a trick. It's complaining because you can't comment out all this stuff inside a describe block. So let me just show you what it did when it complained. It said could not run the tests. So this describe block can't be empty. But there's a trick here. Let me comment this out, and I'll uncomment this. I'm going to turn this into a pending spec. So here, don't try this at home. Here we go. Look at this. Okay. Remember, if you don't have the do and you don't have anything, yeah. So if you get rid of the do and you get rid of the other stuff, it should have a home page at something. This is nice actually, because now it says there's one spec that we're waiting to do. So let's go back here. Let's add a help page using test-driven development. I'm just going to copy this because it's basically the same. So get help should be successful if you get help, and it should have the right title. Should have selector title, base title, help. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Why didn't that work? Oh, okay, that's good. What am I saying? Why didn't that work? Of course, we want to get to red. That's the whole point. Okay, let's go to the routes file. That's where it's config routes. And let's just do this. Get pages help. And I need to restart the Spork server to get this to work. And while we're doing that, let's make a new view. I'm waiting for Spork to start running. So this is help.html.erb. And for brevity's sake, I'm just going to paste in the content. Again, this is at the Rails tutorial book website. Let's run auto test again. Okay, so only one example is failing. And the title is wrong. So what that means, you can see here, should have selector title is failing, and that's true. It's actually not the right title currently, because remember what we have to do in the pages controller. So under app controllers, pages controller, you can see that we need to put another action here for the help page with an at title equals help. And there we are. Now we're green. And now we can take a look at the layout link spec again. Let's take a look at this. There we go. I was just doing Command Z there to undo all of those things. And I saved it to run. Let's take a look. Okay, so this is good. Now we're back to the red that indicates that our routes aren't working. So now we need to go back into this routes file. So it's actually nice that we had to open it up. And so at this point, what we want is a way to match this URL. In this case, let's move it over here. This URL. Let's start with the named ones: /contact, /about, and /help. Let's get these to work in the routes. We'll see that / itself, the root URL, is actually a special one. So let's look at the other ones first. So the way to do this is with a function called match. So match, I'm going to match /contact, and I'm going to route it to the pages controller and the contact action. So pages and # contact. And this takes the place of this get pages /contact. And yeah, so that actually didn't run the integration test. That's why it was green. If we rerun it, we'll see. It's the same number of errors. In fact, we're going to have to restart Spork again. That is kind of annoying that we have to restart Spork, but it's also true that you don't have to do this kind of testing very often. So this kind of rule, match /contact and route it to pages #contact, so pages controller contact action, this is new in Rails 3. This is essentially the router from the MERB project that got merged into Rails. So if you've done Rails before, this might look unfamiliar if you haven't done Rails 3. And let's do the other ones. Match /about to pages about, and then match /help to pages help. So pages home, let's leave that one in, but get rid of the other ones. So let's just leave Spork off for now. We can have to suck up the overhead now, but we can be working on things while we're waiting for the test to run. So you see only one of 3 examples failed. That's good. That means that these 3 matches all worked. And so there's the problem now is /. If we could scroll all the way up. Yeah. So it should have a home page layout link should have a home page at / response should have selector title content home. And so that's what's failing. In fact, if you look at what's being rendered here, it's actually this page. It's actually the default page. So let's get that to pass. Now this is a special situation. Notice I scrolled down. This file is full of all kinds of good stuff. It's very complicated, but it has commented out hints about the kinds of routes you might want to create. And down here you can see that it says you can have the root of your site routed with root. Just remember to delete public/index.html. So I could actually leave this here. I'm gonna copy it and move it up because I'm going to replace pages home with it. So the root goes, in fact, let's just put it at the top because this is the root URL. And it's not going to go to welcome index, it's going to go to pages home. Let's take a look at this. Now notice that we're green, which tells you it's passing, but unfortunately it doesn't actually work yet because we do have to follow the advice here that says just remember to delete public/index.html. So the test doesn't actually test for that, but this is always something you're going to do in every project, which is remove that thing. So we actually have it in the repository. Let's do git rm public index.html, and now the test should still pass and this will work. There we go, look at that. Now we're at localhost:3000/ and it's our home page. So at this point I'm going to restart Spork. What we've accomplished here now is that we have working routes. We don't have links yet, but if you go to /about, it's the about page. If you go to /contact, it's the contact page, and so on. Now it's nice to see that these are working, but of course we don't want to have to type in the URL. We want to be able to click on these links, and if you click on this, it still does nothing. So the next thing to do is to figure out how to add the links to the actual layout. So it turns out by making a routes file, we've already gotten half the way there. So let's take a look at the routes again. Here are the routes. So it turns out that this line, say, match/contact, creates what's called a named route that will let us get to the contact page by typing contact_path or contact_URL. They both do the same thing. The path is just /contact. The URL is localhost:3000/contact, and usually it doesn't matter, as I mentioned before. So let's take a look at this. I want to look at our layout, which is an application.html.erb. I'm going to continue to use the gutter for now, although in real life I would navigate to this in a different way. Let's look at views, layout, application.html.erb. Oh, right, and so we actually want to go into our header and footer partial. So let's look at header. And let's see, we've got help. So let's start with the footer, and then we'll do the header. So in the footer, we've got the about page. And so I just claimed that we could do about_path here and contact_path. The idea is that these routes give us these named routes. So contact gives us contact path, about gives us about path, and help gives us help path. So that's in the header. And then home is a special one. If you look at the routes, remember, this is the root route, and the way you get to the root path of the document is simply root path. Let's save those. Actually, they'll save automatically when I lose focus. And now let's go to the home. Well, actually, let's reload this thing. And now notice that it didn't break. Before, when we had an about path, it broke. So our test actually would have caught any breakage in the about path. So here we go. See, if you look at the top here, or if you look at the bottom left of the screen, it says localhost:3000/about. Here's contact. Here's home. And here's help. So this is a good sign. We've gotten our links working. And there's only one thing left, actually. I just noticed that the size of this H1 is a little too big, so I'm going to fix that before we move on. Let's go over here, and let's close these down. And this is in custom.css, so here it is. This is an H1. Let's just go up to the top. It's actually in the section. This is section, H1, and let's make the font size 200% of the base font. See how that looks. Yeah, that's better. And I just noticed something else we should fix before moving on. Let's go back to TextMate, close the CSS file, and there's actually a missing closing tag in the footer. Here we go. We actually need the closing nav tag here. There we go. So as usual, before moving on, let's do a commit. Let's just do status. Right, so we deleted something, we added a bunch of, or we modified a bunch of things, and we added, that's right, we added the integration test. So let's git add dot, git commit, and then I'm going to say, this is the layout, added layout, links with routes. Good. Now at this point, I just remembered that there's one more layout link we want. If you look at the sample app, you can see that there's a home link here, but typically if you have a logo in the upper left part of an application, it will be a link to the home page as well. And so what we want to do is link this image to slash, that is to say the root path. All right, so let's close this down. Let's go to app controllers, actually it's app views, layouts, and it's going to be in the header, right? Yes, here's our logo. So we see here our image tag. What I want to do is link this to link to, well, where's it going? The image tag is the target of the link. Instead of text, it's a link, and then we can go on to the next line. We can say link to, let's put this down here, and then now we need to put the path, so this is the root path. So let's take a look at that. And there we go. You can see now we get the little hand character. Let me just double check it. There we go. And this is why I had parentheses here. You see these parentheses? If you do link to with no parenthesis and then image tag with no parenthesis, it's ambiguous as to which thing is the argument of which thing. And so if you have no parenthesis here, you better have one here. It will work in some versions of Ruby, but sometimes it'll issue a scary warning. Now I actually don't like this. This is a little ugly. I'm going to make a helper. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to go to the application helper. And I'm going to define a logo helper. Logo. And it's going to be equal to this image tag. So now you can see that you can actually use these Ruby HTML helpers or these Rails HTML helpers inside these helper modules. So let's take a look at this. And so now we can do link to logo and just link it to the root path. Looks a lot nicer. I can double check this. You can write tests for this too. For this sort of thing, I don't usually write tests, but you can if you want, certainly. Now this gives us an opportunity to introduce another idea from Git, because this change logically belongs to the previous commit. So let's go back to our terminal window. And remember, we just committed the changes, but we actually want to add this to that previous commit. So there's a way to do that. It's git commit -- amend. And now it will open up the commit in the editor I have configured by default. I have TextMate configured, and you can look at the Rails tutorial book to see how to do this for your editor. And you see what it did is it just opened the commit message. And so we can edit this. Actually, you know what? I think I need to add it. Let me see. Yes, so I actually need to git add dot. And now if I amend it, all I need to do is close this. I don't actually need to change the name. I can just close this, and what it will do is now make the commit. If we look at git log, it just made the new commit. We can do git log -p. This will actually show the lines that changed. And then we can go down. Let's take a look at yeah, so you can see I just searched for logo. You can see that it actually did the link to logo root path as part of that commit. So that's nice. Now we can see that it actually worked. And if we do git status, in fact, the working directory is clean. Okay, so look at what we've accomplished. We've used test-driven development with integration tests to make these named routes, and then we've used them in the site layout. And now all of these links work internally, except for the sign-in link, which we'll get to in actually some number of lessons from now, I'm not sure, but it's going to take a little bit of time before we get to the sign in. But sign up, we're going to do in the next section of this lesson. It won't actually do the sign up, but we'll actually have a page. And we'll see how to use a named route in the context of a traditional REST resource.